Justin, how are you doing, man? Blockchain People podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Carlos. I'm doing great. How are you?
All good as well. And well, I met you the other day in one of your Twitter Spaces meetups, and I thought it would be pretty interesting to have you here since you're a Monero guy. First of all, like we had a bunch of Monero people here, and it's always been great. Go on, Monero. You're also a compliance professional. You're a crypto guy all around, and you're also a moderator on the cryptocurrency Reddit, which is allegedly a big responsible for whatever little success we had with this podcast. So yeah, like the guys from cryptocurrency are always around here. So how are you doing? Would you like to talk a bit about yourself, talk about your history in all these communities?
Sure, of course. So I have been involved in cryptocurrencies since about 2014, but to be honest, it was really, really casual back then. It was really just the type of person that had heard of crypto. And I didn't really start contributing until 2015 when I learned about Monero. And then in 2016, Monero got its own stack exchange. And so I started contributing to that, asking and answering questions. That was one of the ways I got involved with the cryptocurrencies is I just wanted to understand how it worked. And so I wanted to make sure like I had my bases covered. But one thing I did go and do pretty early was the whole idea of privacy. Before I even knew that Bitcoin existed, I was, I guess, a weird high school kid that was messing around with trying to use Tor and I2P and Freenet and these sort of things. So I had already used decentralized systems before. We had used, distributed, exit nodes, relay nodes and the like with Tor in order to try and get more privacy. So I went into Bitcoin. I'm like, well, someone's trying to do this with money. Okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. And learned pretty early on that I wanted a stronger focus of privacy, which has led me to being a contributor to the Monero project for quite a few years now. In late 2017, as everything was on fire, I was invited to be a moderator of the cryptocurrency subreddit. I still am a moderator. My initial role was to get like a wiki projects off the ground, which we did at the time, and then kind of abandoned due to the difficulty of maintenance. I think there was some efforts to try and rejuvenate those sort of things again. But yeah, I've been a contributor to various aspects of the cryptocurrency space. The last 2 years, I've worked in cryptocurrency compliance in particular. As a student at university, I had a student group there that I ran with a few friends. Now, this is very timely. If you're watching this right now, we are. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that gives out 3 scholarships for students, undergraduate students that are interested in learning about cryptocurrencies. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be, in any particular area of interest. But if you go to magicgrants.org, we are giving out undergraduate scholarships that do apply. The deadline is this week. So
it already happened because this is coming up in 2 weeks.
Okay,
we're recording this in July 13th.
Yeah, so for next school year, make sure to apply if you are interested. And I'm also an organizer of the Cryptocurrency Village at DEF CON, which is a cybersecurity hacker conference. So all sorts of miscellaneous cryptocurrency stuff, but a very strong focus on privacy, Monero in particular, because that's one of the main projects that actually delivers privacy to people.
I would like you also to elaborate on the compliance part because you're a compliance expert, and I reckon there are not that many Monero people that work in compliance as well. We're usually like in the business of causing mayhem, not in the business of fixing it.
It's a good question. So you might think, why would someone that is interested in Monero and was familiar with it then go into compliance and the like? And I think the easy answer is just you'd be surprised at how good Monero knowledgeable people are at understanding these issues. I think you would really be surprised. Like it's not the case that every single Monero contributor wants every government to burn. Like I'm certainly not that type of person. There are those people in Monero, but they're not me. But when it comes to actually recommending like, okay, this is what things, the regulatory landscape looks like, and let's try to just approach it in a sensible way, I think you'd be really surprised at how many Monero contributors are actually pretty good at that. There's a Monero policy working group, for example, where we were like the only people in the cryptocurrency space that responded in favor of one of the things that FinCEN was trying to do because we felt that it would help Monero. And everyone else at the time was like, no, this is terrible. We should never do this. And then like a few months later, well, now everyone else is kind of like, well, actually, that was probably a good idea, right? Like, but it took everyone else a bit longer to sort of come to that view. So no, compliance does not at all mean that we just want, to submit in every sense to the government. Or like, I know that sometimes people may think that, but it's about making sure that, at least the way I view it, I want to make sure that people have access to strong financial systems. I want to make sure that they're legal for people to use. I want to make sure that it's easy for someone to buy and sell Monero. And I also want to make sure that we're doing what we can to catch people that are, inflicting ransomware on systems and extracting millions of dollars, right? So I don't think these things are all super, super mutually exclusive. And I know a lot of people probably do see it that way, but I still think privacy is super important. And it's, I guess, both parts are parts of my life.
There is a very good case to be made for the legality part. And I had Anish Mohammed from the Panther Protocol, CTO of the Panther Protocol here, which would be like, if you're watching this in 2 weeks, like 2 weeks before this, that one's coming up this Friday, no, this Wednesday. And basically the case he was making for policy making when it comes to privacy protocols is that you should think about it in a sense that people think of their governments sort of as they would think about their gods in a religion, whereas they're allowed to extract information from you, but you're not allowed to extract information from them. And the privacy protocols are just a way to like sort of balance this situation out, where they are not allowed to like extract information from you without you revealing it or without you aligning your interests with them. So that's a good way for people to think about in regards to policy making when it comes to privacy protocols. And as you say, it's not like they're mutually exclusive, right? Ideally, you want both parties to have an equal standing when it comes to this.
I mean, let's be blunt, right? Like, it's not only about the regulation side of things, right? Because Monero, Bitcoin, they're going to exist regardless of what some random jurisdiction is going to say, right? Even if you had this, government banned Monero, like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Monero is still going to be around. People are still going to use it, right? So you might say, well, then why bother with any of this stuff? And it's just one of those things where, well, wouldn't you prefer it to be easy, right? Wouldn't you prefer for privacy to be easier for people to start using and to make a main part of everything they want to do in their life rather than just like a more narrow subset? So yeah, we want to make it easy, and also to help inform people that, Monero is here to be around forever, right? Sort of major catastrophic flaw, like there's, it's here and it'll exist regardless of what a specific regulation will say.
We sort of started with Monero here, but I would like us to sidetrack a bit to cryptocurrency. We'll come back to Monero at some point because it's just like a big interest of mine, a big interest of the listeners of the podcast and of yourself, of course. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, that's and I mean the subreddit cryptocurrency. How would you describe your current role in there? Are there any different roles that moderators play, or are they all sort of in the same team where they all try to take a hold of whatever arises at the point?
That's a good question. So I think that the cryptocurrency subreddit has some of the best moderators of any subreddit, like across I would agree. Reddit. Like I genuinely think that you have people that are very careful about making decisions, but are still willing to make them. And so just taking a step back about like what the cryptocurrency subreddit is, it feels a weird role, right? It's a subreddit that is supposed to be a place where people could talk about all sorts of cryptocurrencies out there. And it's supposed to ideally be able to accommodate the decisions of people who think every cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin is a scam, people who think everything other than ETH is a scam, people who are only there for Dogecoin forks, people who are there for privacy only. Like, you have all of these different things that come together, right? So everyone has their own agenda, everyone has their own bag, everyone has their own reason for being there, but we do our best to try and make it work, right? And so we acknowledge that it's obviously not going to be only forum that people use on Reddit. Ideally, you'd follow like all the subreddits of the projects you're interested in and the cryptocurrency subreddit itself also. But I do think that we've done actually a really good job at making it a place where, people can have discussions about cryptocurrencies, whether they're about Bitcoin, Ethereum, or anything else, and it covers all the major news. So my specific role, admittedly, is less going through every single comment at this point. We have quite a few dedicated moderators there that are very active. They very much care about the community, and they really take to heart the role that they have in making the cryptocurrency subreddit a very useful place for cryptocurrency discussion.
In general, I mean, I'm in a couple of cryptocurrency subreddits. I'm a very active user of Reddit, and you would see that every community has their own tone, right? So like if you are in the ETH dev subreddit, they have a certain way they approach things. They're usually people building things on Ethereum network, so they're not as radical as other subreddits would be. Whereas if you go to some subreddit, everything but Bitcoin is a scam, like you said. If you go to the Monero subreddit, they have this very healthy tradition of like the skeptic Sundays and so on and so forth. The cryptocurrency community is like, what is it now? 3 million, 2 million people. And that must be hard to manage, I reckon. Like you see the introduction of the Moons concept, of the Moons cryptocurrency also went a long way in changing how people interact within the subreddit or how people prioritize what they do in there. So in general, how have you seen these changes play out since Reddit introduced the Moon's cryptocurrency into the subreddit?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I would say the cryptocurrency subreddit, and this is spurred on by quite a few things, but through late 2020 and early 2021, the cryptocurrency subreddit at times was, for weeks at a time, was often the fastest growing subreddit on all of Reddit. Like it really grew. And you saw that in page views, for example. There are some months we have over 120 million page views in the subreddit. And people are commenting a lot. The cryptocurrency subreddit only has, a few thousand more subscribers than the Bitcoin subreddit, for example, but we have over 10 times as many comments per day right now. So it really has been a lot of growth. And luckily we've been through that type of ridiculous growth before through 2017. So now for this time, it was far simpler by comparison. Like we had more structure in place to get that through. But yeah, on the Moon side of things, and I just want to take a short step back and describe, what cryptocurrency moons are. So about a year and a half ago, Reddit approached us and asked, "Hey, we're interested in trialing this Ethereum Rinkeby testnet coin, whereby users would receive some of this coin based off how much karma they would earn in your subreddit." So we were open to the idea. We ended up, working with them to roll that out. But this ultimately is a Reddit-driven led project.
Can I stop you for a second there? Because
Sure.
I find this part of the process very interesting. So this idea, where does this idea originate?
So it was probably originated by Reddit itself. They sort of been toying around at times at like a Reddit coin as I think they took Bitcoin at times. Like they've always been cryptocurrency conscious. And in 2017, for example, they edited the subtitle basically of their mobile apps to include like cryptocurrency news and stuff. Like they've always been crypto conscious.
Right.
So the Ethereum, I think it was ETH Trader subreddit was the first to get something rolled out like this. They had donuts and it was the first time they had tested using this type of reward functionality. There certainly were limitations with it. They learned a lot. There was a lot of drama in the community at the time with how it was rolled out. And then I think it was at least several months later, Reddit trialed it on the two larger subreddits. So the cryptocurrency subreddit, which obviously I'm familiar with, that's in the form of Moons, and Fortnite BR in the form of bricks. And the two of these were implemented very, very similarly. So
Bricks
I mean,
and
it was
Moons,
driven
just
by Reddit ultimately.
Bricks and Moons, just adding for the people that are not watching on YouTube and that are on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, Bricks and Moons being the quote unquote names of these cryptocurrencies. Just for those not watching, you do the air quotes.
Okay. Yes. Those are the names. So, this is a predominantly Reddit driven process. They came up with what the distribution looks like, and they came up with all the marketing materials for these projects and everything they wanted to do, which makes sense. I mean, Reddit's pulling in, technically valueless coins, which I put in air quotes there because they are on the Rinkeby testnet on Ethereum, but on secondary markets, they do trade. I mean, it's a cryptocurrency. People are going to speculate on them. So it has caused an interesting dynamic. So that's what cryptocurrency moons are. Basically, if you submit comments, if you submit posts that people upvote and like every month, you will, based off weighting that people have agreed on, you will be able to receive a proportional amount of moons. And then you can use those moons for a few things. You can use them to tip other users. You can use them for the reason you use any other cryptocurrency. You can always just send it back and forth between wallets, I suppose. You can use it to vote on governance proposals. So if we have a new subreddit rule that we're toying around, we can, have a poll to see if a rule will be implemented. And we can also have moon distribution proposals where you can say, for example, I don't want memes to be worth any karma. You could try proposing something like that, or memes to give you any moon. So you could put that up as a potential vote, and people would vote on it. And if it would get, the majority agreeing with you, then that would be passed.
And for anyone wondering, sorry to cut you there, for anyone wondering why would someone make a proposal for moons to not give you any, for memes to not give you any moons? Basically, people get awarded moons every time they get upvoted, which is like the Reddit equivalent of a like. And basically, that would make some kind of content that's very low effort to generate a lot of likes or a lot of upvotes, and other content that's more thoughtful or more scientific or took people a long time to type just didn't generate enough moons as this kind of content. So in a way, these proposals are a way to steer the subreddit into a direction where people that get put in the most effort get rewarded the most.
Of course. And we actually had this isn't technically a moon distribution proposal, but it was a subreddit governance proposal where people voted on whether or not they wanted memes in the subreddit, right? And the community actually voted that no, they do not want memes anymore. We've really played around with ridiculous lines in the past where we allow 2 on the front page or 3, or allow them on weekends or not. We've actually gone back and forth on these issues quite a bit. And ultimately at the moment, the cryptocurrency subreddit does not allow memes. We have a sister subreddit, Cryptocurrency Memes, that does. And so we just point everybody there. And we actually did also vote to allow for the top memes posted in that subreddit to get some of the moon distribution also, a certainly smaller amount than if memes were on the main subreddit. But we wanted to still encourage cryptocurrency memes because, as Dogecoin kind of proves, memes still do have some value. Right. So it's been an interesting dynamic with the moons. Obviously the subreddit is not all about the moons. And so that's an interesting dichotomy we need to deal with, where we want to be the place where people talk about all cryptocurrencies, not just moons. So it's almost like we need a separate subreddit that is, and I'm sure someone's made this, that is only about moons discussion, which is kind of funny. So there are definitely some people that think moons are terrible. You have other people that are very, very in favor of moons. And you have people like me that are, I like to see it trialed out. And I also think that it's done a net positive things for the subreddit. So I think that it's encouraged content. I think it encourages users of the subreddit who otherwise would have been quiet to participate. I think that it encourages people to speak up far more aggressively about content they don't want to see in the subreddit. And it's kind of funny to see a cryptocurrency community that largely would skew libertarian all of a sudden be like, no, we need to have moderation. We want to have these sort of things for stuff we don't want to see. And we want to have more fair distributions of coins and the like. So it is actually interesting to watch it all unfold. See like cryptocurrency, which predominantly is a libertarian skewing community, be come together about issues like moderation and the like, and having formal proposals, and it's interesting. It's interesting. It's been fun to watch.
There have been very fun social dynamics going on, and that range from how people deal with the low effort posts to how people try and steer the community towards better governance and more and better. We can even say like direct democracy, and that's very interesting to watch unfold. I want to ask you a couple questions regarding that, but first I'll just send to a quick message from our sponsors. Guys, this is the only 30-second ad we have. Just don't leave the video. Take this chance to tell a friend that you love them, drink some water, leave a comment, subscribe, do whatever you want. Stay tuned because there's a lot of cool discussion coming on. The Blockchain People podcast is brought to you by Coin Payments, the world's first and leading crypto payment processor. Coin Payments serves over 70,000 merchants in over 200 nations with industry low fees since 2013. The Coin Payments wallet lets users hold over 2,000 different cryptocurrencies, which is why they're used by giants such as NordVPN and Binance. Whether you're a merchant or an individual looking to get paid in crypto, Coin Payments could be just what you need. Justin, backtracking a little bit to something that I think I caught you in the middle of, is so when Reddit comes up with this proposal to roll out the moons within the subreddit, I assume that you moderators have your own private subreddit or your own private forum where you interact. So how does the process of Reddit itself coming up to you guys and telling that they want to implement this, how does this work? Did they just like tell you, okay, this is what's happening, or do they ask you for any feedback? How does it look like in practice?
So I believe they originally reached out to us through ModMail, just to be like, hey, we're interested in potentially pursuing this idea. There's some other different ideas that they've done with us in the past. We do seem to be a team that the Reddit employees like working with for implementing new Reddit features. And I can't speak to everything that they went through, but I can say that they were like, they came to us, they didn't force it on us. They said, hey, we're interested in potentially working with you on this. Is this something you also are interested in? On the moderator side of things, we do have our own separate subreddit that's private just for recording certain things. But at this point, we predominantly use Discord for communication. We have a separate moderator server. And we also do use that for inviting some other like influencers, project leads, other subreddit mods, those sorts of things in there too, with their own separate channels, just so we can stay in touch with them more easily also. But yeah, for this particular case, they did invite moderators for feedback. We were involved pretty early on, and my personal view is they did a pretty good job to make sure that we were in agreement with what they wanted to do, and we were on the same page, and we had some discussions to iron out. Well, so first of all, so we can understand what they wanted to do and why, and then also to make sure that like ahead of time, we were ironing out as many of the potential hiccups we saw ahead of time before they went wide with it and actually ran with the idea. But moons aren't actually the only thing they've done that with. They actually have it's not a betting market, and I'm sure that their legal team would very much say it's not a betting market, but they do have different like contests and things people can vote on. Like there's other things that they've rolled out in the subreddit too.
Like these prediction things, right?
Exactly. It's like a prediction where you say, well, what's going to happen? Like, for example, what's the price of Bitcoin going to be in 1 week, right? And people can like vote on it. And if they get the right answers, it's technically not moons. It's actually some other token, but then we somehow tie it in so that they're also, we launched it with the idea that like, if you do well in this prediction market, in this prediction set of votes, and you get the most prediction coins effectively, that whoever was on the top of the leaderboard would get moons and the like. So we do, have targeted ways where we try to encourage, people to start using features and to be interested and to engage. That's kind of the whole point of moons, really, is to help encourage engagement. And I think that just looking at the number of comments we have in the subreddit, for example, like we do. So yeah, so that's a little bit of the background of like how the Reddit admins came, and we do have ongoing discussion with them. They are like, I can just send them a message, for example, right now and be like, hey, what about this? Or point them to a comment. Hey, this user had this question, and they're pretty good at actually like responding in my experience.
So we can, yeah, just a disclaimer there as well for you as for Reddit. Like, yeah, these are not prediction markets. They're more like a playful feature where people can just like get awarded with a couple tokens for saying that they think the price is gonna swing either way, and it's usually a multi-option thing. So it's not like people are making their own inputs, right? I would, I think it's pretty interesting to see how well this thing rolled out and how well thought it was, because for something as new, albeit they had done it before with the donuts thing, as you pointed out, for something as new as this and in such a big community to roll out this smoothly, with the obvious caveat that there's going to be some fine tuning along the way, I think the implementation rolled out pretty well. Do you have any experience with how it played out for the Minecraft thing?
So we've been in contact with the Minecraft mods from time to time. I don't think we've had a recent discussion with them. They, I think we kind of ran into similar challenges where we're like, okay, well, how do we help users set up a vault? How do we help users understand that they need to have a strong password and two-factor authentication on their Reddit account, which may be worth several $1,000s at that point if they were very active and got a lot of coins, right? So we had similar discussions about how we actually inform users about those sorts of things. And we had a lot of similar questions to begin with, like, okay, what happens if if we promote a post, for example, like, you can add the little sticky, the post at the top of the subreddit. Does that change things? And we just needed to have those questions answered, and obviously more and more have come up as we've come across more and more niche situations. So I honestly haven't spoken to them in probably a few months now to see what's going on their end, but I would not be surprised if they've seen people engage more in general there as opposed to other similar gaming subreddits.
And ideally, if you're Reddit in this stance, and what you would want to see is that the two communities start off very closely tied and very closely related to sort of help them figure their way out of certain issues, and then eventually get split down into very separate communities to see as well how the same concept can roll out differently in two different communities, right?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. And I imagine that's one of the reasons why Reddit did go the way it did, right? Take a cryptocurrency that you're making on Ethereum, right? Start by launching it in a relatively niche-ish Ethereum-focused subreddit that where the moderators are willing. Then try, one part, a very broad cryptocurrency subreddit where people are open to the idea of cryptocurrencies generally, and then also a gaming subreddit that skews young and people are like interested to try new things. One thing I remember from when these, cryptocurrency moons and Fortnite BR bricks started, bricks actually got a faster initial adoption, I think I would say, where people were tipping it more to begin with. People were engaging with it more on the Fortnite BR side, actually, than they were on the cryptocurrency side for the first few months. But at this point, I think the majority of activity is still on cryptocurrency moons as opposed to any other tokens.
Do you think this can have something to do with the fact that people in the cryptocurrency space have a more monetized approach to these kind of things? Like they talk about trading, they talk about hodling, they talk about treating things as money, when they're in reality, like, some people would argue that they're not worth the money. Some people would argue that they are. I personally think that they are, and I think most of the crypto community sees the value in digital assets, even if they're quote unquote printed by a subreddit. And in the Minecraft community, they might see it as some token to play with, right? Although eventually it might evolve in the same direction as cryptocurrency, just as communities get more professional or get full of like moon farmers that are trying to optimize for certain outcomes. And that is something that I wanted to ask you. Yeah, do you see something like this eventually playing out in a Wall Street bets type of scenario where people are trying to pump the price of moons to the moon in order to make the most gains out of it?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's a speculative asset that's already in the hands of many Redditors. And although we take pride in the cryptocurrency subreddit very much not having the same culture as Wall Street bets, where everything is diamond hands there, yeah, I would not be surprised. Is, you know, at the moment they don't really allow cryptocurrency discussion, but if they did, I imagine you would have people there pumping it. Like, it's just not. It would not surprise me at all.
That's a very interesting observation there, because you see subreddits like Reddit in general has the same profile user, right? Like, in most people in Reddit are, and this is just by looking at the stats, not judging at the behavior of the people for anyone that's going to call me things in the comments, but like, most people are nerdy, white, and American, and male in Reddit. That's just the top demographics that you see play out in there. And it's very interesting to see how communities that are quote unquote the same or are very similar to each other have very different behaviors within their respective subreddits. And you're right, like, cryptocurrency behaves very differently than Wall Street bets. And it's funny to see that they, whereas in Wall Street bets, you would see like a lot of different assets being discussed. In cryptocurrency, you would very easily pinpoint which one's the main one, right? Being Bitcoin. So it's fun to see that there has not been any attempts to have coordinated efforts to pump any one coin in there, particularly Bitcoin.
I'm sure that I think that, what, do they allow Dogecoin or something for like one day or something? Like, the subreddit obviously went nuts for that day in that particular regard. So I think, I don't know, who knows what they're going to do. Back to your point though about users having like different behaviors in certain subs. I think it's not even just the case that you have some users that are interested in certain things and participate in some subreddits and others in others. I mean, that is true, where people who are into certain things will gravitate in certain subs as opposed to others. But even people, like, you have some people that are Redditors and they will show up and they expect for this specific subreddit they visit to be very professional and very on point and very factual and to the point, no nonsense around or anything. And then they'll hop over to another subreddit where they're just shit posting constantly, right? Like, the whole point of that subreddit for them is this specific thing. So Reddit's, I mean, I guess that's the whole point of why different subreddits exist, is you can have different cultures about different things, but it's just interesting how certain users may put on, you know, one hat in a certain room and then a completely different hat in a different room. So that plays out as well too, where you might have, I'm sure you do have quite a few Redditors that are in Wall Street bets, being all Wall Street betty, and then they show up in the cryptocurrency subreddit, and I don't know what they do there. Maybe they show Nano or something. I don't know. That seems to be a common thing people do. So it's interesting how people have different hats sometimes.
If I were to be on a certain team, I would be on the team of moons made our cryptocurrency worst, just because I see a lot of effort being made towards farming moons and towards earning moons. And I see a devolution going on into the echo chamber model rather than the discussion and honest, unbiased thinking, because yeah, you have a lot of people optimizing for saying things that the community would like rather than challenging their thought positions. Are there any efforts being made by Reddit itself or the moderation or the community? I'm not that familiar with the internal politics of this, but are there any efforts to like fight off cryptocurrency becoming an echo chamber?
That's a good question. So I would say, I guess the one thing I want to preface this with is that I don't think the moons are the cause of this problem. I think that's just, you know, I think the cryptocurrency subreddit largely has been like this for a very long time. And it's not just the cryptocurrency subreddit. It's been the case that people you have groups of people that are trying to usually in the cryptocurrency subreddit's case, they're trying to show a certain agenda or coin. So people will show up and they will, like, let's say, heavily promote something. And so as a result, we have we're lucky to have one of the best anti-vote manipulation is what it's called, teams, where we've reported at times things to the Reddit admins, and they have gone through based off the reports we made and banned thousands of accounts that are like all trying to promote things, make comments in certain ways, shill things in certain ways. Like, we're not the only, like, you might think, okay, cryptocurrency subreddit is probably the worst with people trying to shill certain agendas, but Reddit itself has to deal with a lot of these problems with a lot of the political subreddits where people are like, sure, they're not directly interested in trying to shill a coin to pump it to make money, but there's a lot of other factors at play, right? Where people are trying to push very, certain political agendas. So we're wary of the idea that Moons might help promote the idea of an echo chamber, but these are problems we've already had to deal with, I suppose, for many, many years, where, they get, usually what happens is you get a group of people together and they'll just upvote anything, regardless of the quality of the content, if it points the project that they like or invested in, or like in a positive light. Like if it paints it in a positive light, they'll just be like, yep, I disagree, but still upvote because I want to, support my bag. So those are challenges we've had to deal with for a while. And I think that just speaks to why it's important that we have moderation that's based on the idea of just how are people interacting with the subreddit? Are they trying to actually contribute to the subreddit? Are they just trying to shill their bag? What are they trying to do? And making sure that it is in part trying to actually like help out, like provide quality, useful content. And that's obviously back and forth. There's no straightforward, easy answer to that. And that's why we have, we use Moons to incentivize things that aren't just shilling certain coins, right? Like we try to do fun things like trivia where people learn things. We try to do, incentivizing people dealing with those prediction systems. And I think that you're never going to have it, like this will never be a solved problem. So if people have ideas about how they can try to reduce echo chamber effect, we're certainly all ears. Going back to the whole reason why I was a mod in the first place to start and making the release of like pros and cons wiki pages for each coin. Like those are the sorts of things we do to try and discourage echo chambery stuff.
I'd also say that echo chambers are a very inherent property of social media and of human interaction in general, right? Like we tend to gravitate to those that confirm our own biases rather than.
Well, I would say too, I agree, but I would say don't just look at the cryptocurrency subreddit in isolation too. Look at it compared to other communities also. So if you take the cryptocurrency discussion, like, okay, even, let's take a coin like Nano, which is very heavily promoted. It has a history of being a very disproportionately promoted, for example,
which one,
in the cryptocurrency subreddit.
Which one was that?
Nano.
Nano, yeah.
Right. It's very, Nano has characteristics that are very easy for a newcomer to share and point out the positive light on. It's cheap, it's accessible. It's very easy to shill, so to speak, right? And so, and the distribution model put it in the hands of a lot of the cryptocurrency subreddit users back in like 2016, 2017, or whatever it happened, right? So it's compare the discussions you have on Nano, which still often are disproportionately positive in the cryptocurrency subreddit, but compare that to the discussion you're going to have in nano currency, right? Which one's going to be a little bit more unbiased, right? At least in the cryptocurrency subreddit, you do have, like, sure, you get people that just are like, oh, saves the world, whatever. But like, I don't think it's the extreme of being, okay, what's exclusively in favor of something or exclusively in like the Bitcoin Twitter side of things where it's exclusively negative. I do think that we haven't solved for the right balance, but I do think that compared to other cryptocurrency communities out there, I don't really know where you're going to get a better place to speak where it isn't extreme on really any end. So I think that does speak to us to, having done something right, even if we haven't solved for the problem.
I mean, and I have to agree with you that in this big community, at least you'd get some pushback if you try to push the edges towards steering people's opinion, right? Even the hardcore Bitcoin maximalist, although most people in cryptocurrency would be pro Bitcoin, even the Bitcoin maximalist will get some pushback in that subreddit that he wouldn't get in a purely Bitcoin subreddit or in other subreddits. You mentioned the efforts towards avoiding manipulation on Reddit. And I'm very curious about this one particular case. I don't know if you remember it from now we're going full gossip mode. Sorry, I'm Mexican. Now we're going into this case. Man, I remember this Caracas girl user, and she was posting about like how she was using all these moons rewards that she was getting, and she would also include a couple of cryptocurrency addresses for people to send her crypto in order to buy food for people in Venezuela, where like $1 would go a long way. And I remember seeing this and thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. But like some people were calling her out on like being a scam or whatever, and then she disappeared. So I wanted to know if you knew something about what happened with this.
So that particular case doesn't ring a bell, but no? We do generally not allow for like, we may make rare exceptions if people provide proof, but we don't allow people to post like donation addresses and the like, just because the sad truth is, even though you do have very, very good initiatives by people who are being honest, I mean, when there's no cost to make a fake one, people are just going to make fake ones all the time, right? So we don't allow that. We have at times promoted certain charities, but we generally don't allow for people to post like donation addresses on the subreddit.
Are there any other cases of like, I'm not saying that this one was manipulation, I was just curious because it was sort of obvious that it could be if it wanted to be, and people certainly were calling it out. And at the same time, she managed to get a decent amount of funds that if she used to, if she even was such if she used to feed people in Venezuela, like that's of course a very loable cause. But would you recall any other instances of manipulation that were particularly clever or that at some point managed to get you guys?
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's been a while since I've written one of these, but I've written a few articles that I called Shit Shills Say. I just put them on Medium, and it just goes through like some of the crazy stories. At this point, they're several years old, but one example, a cryptocurrency news website of, let's just say low quality. It definitely was low quality. Maybe it was average for cryptocurrency news. So it was very low quality to begin with. They tried to get around our URL like domain filters by purchasing, I believe it was about 50 different domains. Wow. And using bots to repost news content using those domains redirected to their main domain. And they use like various tricks to try and do that. So in order to deal with that problem, we just went through and manually banned like 50 odd plus domains that they had, right? So like that's an example where someone really tried to go out of their way to evade the rules of the subreddit. Or we've had people that have made like there are some very obviously against the Reddit terms of services out there that will try to like upvote certain things with different accounts or provide comments or downvote everything else to try and promote your thing indirectly. And we probably get that a little bit more than many other subreddits. So at times we'll notice, okay, well, usually it's pretty obvious, right? I'd have to go through what I did on there's a few, we sometimes get some funny messages from people that are like, the common one is they think that the subreddit is their location for like freedom of speech, or they don't understand what's wrong with linking something somewhere else and telling everyone to go upvote it somewhere else. And so then we ban them. And so really the most common things we get is people linking things on like in Telegram or Discord communities saying to upvote here and then just not understanding why we don't want that. And honestly, it's usually like that's the process that happens about 90% of the time. And usually they're pretty easy to spot people who are showing up for no reason other than a comment about why this project is usually a good investment for some particular reason they believe, or going to the moon or whatever. And then I'll just nuke all them and move on, I guess. Yeah, the biggest VM case that comes to mind is just
VM being vote manipulation, I guess.
Oh, yes. We also have some people will sometimes post comments repeatedly, and they will vary. Like there are some times when people would like change the wording, and like people do all sorts of crazy stuff in order to try and bypass automated filters, because we obviously can't see every single comment that people submit, right? We get so many comments, right?
So you guys are volunteers in the end of the day, like you're not doing it, you're not getting paid for this.
So it's some people will try to take like pretty aggressive steps to bypass spam filters, but luckily we're pretty good at knowing what we're doing to block all that sort of stuff. I would say too, one of the common things, we're pretty good at this too, is referral links often are a problem in a lot of subreddits, but you probably haven't seen one in the cryptocurrency subreddit, because we have just pages and pages and pages of rules to prevent like referral links, and we take very aggressive lines at like preventing that type of, preventing users who make or post referral links from being able to post stuff like that.
What was this case that you were going to quote, the biggest case of vote manipulation that you've seen?
Oh, it's been the case where we have thousands and thousands of accounts that are manipulating content.
Okay.
Yeah, thousands and thousands.
I've seen that. I mean, I worked with a crypto news site for a while myself, and I remember the length. I don't think it was the same one that you mentioned that had banned domains, because this domain never got banned. I still see it showing up in Reddit from time to time, but I would see that a bunch of them. Like, why did you ban the domain at the same to start with? Like, were they manipulating the bots? Were they purchasing up bots to fight that? I mean, to prop up their own posts?
So this is an interesting case. They actually didn't run ads, I believe, on this particular news site. I think they were just trying to get the clicks. So maybe for eventual running of ads, I don't really know what their specific model was, but they did. They just posted like if a news site will consistently not cite their sources and post garbage, we will not allow it to be in the subreddit. So like this is another discussion we've had quite a bit, where like, to what extent do we put warnings on certain news sites? What extent do we block certain domains? What extent do we promote certain domains? We've actually gone back and forth on domain whitelists. We've actually tried for a few weeks. We trialed having whitelists where only certain websites could be linked, because people would like link to all sorts of crazy stuff. That is not currently enforced. We haven't enforced that for a while now, but we went to the point of trying that out to see what it would look like. Because sadly, like, sure, you have all sorts of reasons to think that cryptocurrency news coverage in traditional, mainstream media is often leaves a lot to be desired, but let's also be fair that the cryptocurrency news media isn't exactly setting up new standards for journalistic and
never
anything. So it's kind of sad, but it's the way it is. So
we have to We have to think about like when I was working with this site, one of the things that we were proud of ourselves on is instead of trying to manipulate Reddit, like it was even frowned upon in the internal culture of the company to share your Reddit post for other members of the company to upvote it. People would try to, in particular writers, would try to get input from the subreddit on what they wanted to know about it, even like by scrolling and seeing what was being made popular in there, and trying to like use that to reverse engineer the article so they would serve what the community wanted, which is like in its own way some kind of manipulation, right? But I would say like it's like a white hat style of manipulation.
Yeah, I guess that more falls under the say what people want to hear, thing.
Yeah. Which is a problem in crypto media in general. Like you wouldn't have a bearish crypto media. Like it has to be bullish by default. It has to say that Bitcoin is going to the moon.
No one's gonna click on like why all sorts of people think that crypto is going to fail, or they're going to upvote daily drama, and they're going to upvote why crypto is obviously going to be worth, a $6 quadrillion industry in 2 years, right?
Which is why crypto in itself is a bit of a cult and a bit of an echo chamber. Like, I mean, man, no disrespect to Anthony Pompliano, but like, I wouldn't imagine being this guy and sitting down and tweeting Bitcoin is going to the moon 72 times a day. Like, I just don't know how this is possible.
Yeah, see, that's what people certainly do that in the cryptocurrency stuff, but I think we've been pretty clear. We're not just a diamond hands rocket ship up subreddit. I mean, you have elements of that. It's not completely devoid of that. You have people that are very bullish on cryptocurrency general and on certain projects. And to a large extent, we want to encourage that, right? It would suck to have a subreddit where everyone is just pissed all the time, right?
Yeah.
And pessimistic. But no, we don't want it to be the case that it's a foregone conclusion and everything's going to go up and everything's going to be great and everyone's going to be rich and whatever else. Like, we don't want that either. So it's sometimes a fine line, and you're going to see examples of something that crosses it and the like. But I think, Lart, the important thing is making sure that the subreddit has a purpose beyond that, which I think we definitely do.
I think Reddit itself has managed to like establish its own presence in the mainstream world a little bit more than before, right? Like nowadays I see more and more quote unquote normies coming onto Reddit, whereas before it would be like only the super nerds that were there, including myself. And I've seen that, I see that as a positive, because we now see more and more like cannibalistic practices from the big social media platforms. I mean, did Twitter swallow up Clubhouse already in its entirety by now? Because I met you in a Twitter Spaces, and that's pretty much a copy paste of Clubhouse. And yeah, is Clubhouse dead by now? I just detoured, but like,
yeah, I did a Clubhouse recently. I mean, this is not. I'm not an avid Clubhouse user, but it does seem to have died down a bit, based off my very, very isolated experience. So it's not very useful. But yeah, I'm not going to be scheduling something on Clubhouse. I'm going to be doing it on Twitter Spaces. Or I think the one with the most potential, to be honest, is the Discord stages. We have with our subreddit, we have a related Discord, the cryptocurrency Discord. There's many tens of thousands of people there. And we've done a few trial Discord stages that have gone quite well. And I think that this is Discord's competitor to Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and the like. Telegram has their own thing too, which I haven't really used, but I've heard good things about, and I've been meaning to use more. But one of the ways we want to help encourage people to actually like get involved in cryptocurrency beyond just follow the subreddit or read posts, or like, we want to actually invite people on stage and to talk about stuff and be thrown in front of a situation where I actually have to ask questions and talk about their experiences. So it actually is very important to us that we work on like the Discord stage side of things. And what I really want to see, if Discord stages allows for one live stream during, like, sure, you can already have Discord live stream to a group and like, but I want it to be literally the stage format where you can invite people on stage and you will have allow one live stream. Then I can do trivia that way. I can invite people on stage while I'm doing trivia. People can do their stupid like TA showing like, oh yeah, this, and invite guests on, and everyone else can just listen and comment. And like, I think that Discord stage is actually like really, really promising.
Is it? No, this is just like random shit that's popping up in my head, but like, is TA banned from cryptocurrency, the subreddit now? I haven't seen TA in there for a long time, and I'm so happy to not see that.
I think the reason you haven't seen it, yeah. So along with memes, we basically we prohibit one-off image posts. You can't just post an image. You have to like contextualize it. So it is definitely possible that someone at the moment, according to current rules, assuming you don't violate others, like if you wrote a thoughtful post and in it had charts, TA stuff, whatever like, and you wrote enough and it was detailed enough that it wouldn't just be a comment in the daily, for example. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't be able to do that, but I think the reason why you don't see it anymore is because the vast majority of people will just post a single chart without context as an image and just have the title like shitcoin A to the moon, and that was what they posted, and we just didn't want that.
Right. Let's go back to privacy, which we started with, which is like a big interest of yours and of mine. I've seen the Monero community grow and develop on Twitter a lot lately, and I feel like it's a community that poses its own challenges, but that also has like a lot of pros when you compare it in particular to the Bitcoin maxis, which are like their main enemy, right? It's like an ongoing one-way fight, I would say, because the Bitcoin maxis don't care that much, but like everyone in Monero is sort of like trying to constantly dismiss the maxis. So would you speak to your t-shirt? Like I'm curious about what that is.
Yeah, so I'm wearing a Monero Research Lab t-shirt. I love this t-shirt. I have it in both black and white. I love them. I am I'm the host of a series called Breaking Monero. It was something I started, I believe it was like late 2017, maybe it was like 2017, 2018. I started a series called Breaking Monero, where we tried to look at its limitations. And I'm very interested in knowing what the practical limitations are to Monero's ring signatures. It started at a DEF CON talk, I guess. Yeah, so it would have been 2018. I started at a DEF CON talk at 2018. I talked at the Monero Village, and it was just like, here's the limitations about ring signatures. Here are why they suck. And it just spiraled into its own series. So I'm very, very interested in making sure that Monero is making sensible privacy and efficiency trade-offs. I think that among Bitcoin supporters, I think most of them are too dismissive of the benefits of privacy implemented well. And I've been a voice within the Monero community and of course within the broader cryptocurrency community about the importance of implementing privacy in a way that actually matters and people actually get the benefits from. And so it's many members in the Monero community are there because they trust Monero as a tool that works for them in providing that privacy. And they don't really trust their own ability to use a certain other tool correctly in a way that does the same thing. And I think there's a lot of value in being able to assign, like to just relax and get privacy and fungibility in the way that you want. And not everybody gets that, of course, but I think that it is valuable. And it's part of the reason why Monero has its own following.
I mean, and some people would say, including Big Sharma, he was in the podcast here, and he would argue that Monero is more a mindset than a coin, because what makes Monero great itself is not so much the coin, which of course it's the main thing, but like it's just the way people keep approaching it from like you that are trying to like explain why it sucks, like the skepticism Sundays that try to explain why the whole project might fail, the people that are just trying to constantly build the best encryption possible, the easiest system to use, which differs a bit from what Bitcoin Core has try to achieve, which is like this gold standard of store of value cryptocurrency, which some people might argue for and some people might argue against. And you mentioned something very important of Monero, which is the by default privacy, which is the setting that effectively differentiates it from other privacy coins. But I've seen that constantly, like in the hive mind, in the crypto hive mind, and in particular when it comes to big figures such as, for example, Vitalik or Charles Hoskinson or whatever, they keep popping up Zcash when they talk about privacy coin. So why do you think Monero hasn't been able to like take up that space in people's minds where privacy coin equals Monero?
I think there's a few reasons. One, a lot of the individuals who talk about Zcash, like certainly isn't the case for everybody, but most people who talk about Zcash are probably invested in Zcash. Mm-hmm. If you actually look at the number of transactions that people are making, it's not even close. Like it really isn't close. Usually once a month I'll post. I'll post comparisons. Today, right? Yeah, I'll post comparisons like once a month, usually comparing Monero to other like often bundled privacy coins, for example. And I mean, Monero last month had more transactions that hit the sender receiver amount than Zcash has had in its whole existence, right? So how close are they? How many people are actually using Zcash? And I don't want to be entirely dismissive of the project. I've tried to give it a chance. I was involved in some of the discussions in the past, but it's not especially interesting to me because I just don't see people actually using the privacy feature much. I'm involved in cryptocurrency because I want to see privacy actually be adopted. I don't want it to be just kick the can down the road. And until it is widely adopted in something like Zcash, I just don't find it especially interesting. I think one of the reasons why being involved with Monero is so thrilling is that you don't just have a narrative of just, oh, well, I'm not people in Monero are not just there to I guess, I mean, there certainly are people that are just there to make money, but like you also have this really compelling narrative of actually bringing privacy to people, right? Bringing fungibility to people. And that's what motivates me is I want to actually get this privacy out to people because I don't like the idea that everything is completely transparent. I want that to change. I don't like the idea that only people who opt in to something or know how to use a tool very well get these privacy features. I want it to be easy. I want it to be default. I want people to not have to think about it. That's the future of money I want people to have. So, like when you compare Monero to Zcash, Dash, Grin, Beam, all of the Bitcoin mixing, right? Like more Bitcoin people use Monero for privacy than everything else, including Bitcoin and Ethereum mixing, right? It's just night and day.
I would say, well, first of all, 2 points, separate ones. I would say that having the privacy is good for us, and therefore we all should have access to it, be sort of like the leitmotif of the whole of the whole Monero community. That makes a much more compelling case as to why the asset is volatile, or as to why we should all exchange using an asset that's volatile. Whereas in the Bitcoin community, I don't think there's ever been a case that's been made of why we should use a volatile currency as a medium of exchange. Like, if what you aim to do, at least in my particular point of view, if what you aim to do is to replace money altogether, it doesn't make much sense to have something hyper volatile be the replacement for money, right? Whereas when you add the privacy thing on top of that, that's what you say, okay, we can go through this little like nuisance in order to achieve this better purposing. So I think that's something that makes privacy by default very compelling as an argument. And I would wonder, like, what's the counter argument? What's like the Zcash argument or the Bitcoin mixing argument? Well, I guess I know what the Bitcoin mixing argument, but like, what's the Dash, Zcash, all these other privacy protocols argument for why they're not privacy by default?
I mean, it's for a variety of reasons. I mean, Zcash in its early history kind of toyed with the idea that eventually they would go to shielded only. that really hasn't materialized. Instead, they've kind of gone down a marketing set of why it's user choice that matters, and its compatibility with exchanges and like, and oh, well, we would love to do this, but XYZ in real life gets in the way, and it's better to have as the transparency as an option. And they've built a lot of their assumptions around the idea of this transparent layer always being there. For example, they have like transparent migrations and the like when they will change shielded pools. So it's I guess there isn't a super obvious answer in every case. I think by and large, though, I think that to summarize it, they don't prioritize the implementation as much as I personally would like to see. Like if I could snap my fingers, I would love for nothing more than Zcash to be fully shielded, but it just doesn't seem to be a priority of the community at the end of the day. Some members might be vocal about it, but it's by and large not the main thing people are talking about there. Now you have other discussions about what they call like user-defined assets, or I think they have a new name for it now, but there are all sorts of other things that they're looking at that aren't specifically making what they already have more widely implemented, right? I mean, it's more like a side. It hasn't really been the main focus of their development and plans for a while. But on the Monero side, it's just, I mean, it's an easy formula. Ironically, you just take something that is remotely sensible. It's not even the most important that it is the best idea. You just take a reasonably okay idea and you just make it widely implemented, right? So it's all on the ladder. And I think Monero is proof that implementation is actually really important. So it, I mean, Dash has gone into other priorities too, for example, where they, I mean, sure, they still allow private send, but they haven't updated it really in a while. And they've focused more on their instant send type features and, settlement and other sorts of things. But I guess quickly going back to your other point too, about like the whole, why would you want to use a volatile asset for exchange? I mean, honestly, at sometimes I wish I could just wave a magic wand and say, Monero is now a stable coin, right? Like if I could wave a wand with no downsides at all, I mean, honestly, part of me would want to do that.
Yeah.
Because in practice, for example, that's probably what most people would prefer to transact with at the moment, right? Because people still think in terms of fiat, which I don't think is going to change for a while. So, until Bitcoin or something else becomes less volatile, which may or may not happen, who knows? But it is a disadvantage generally to have to transact in a volatile asset. Like I think most people would agree with that.
That is like a main talking point. I mean, it's not enough of a talking point, and it's a very big con of why people of cryptocurrency in general, like, okay, this thing has all the properties of money except for one, and that's like the most important one. And I mean, it doesn't get discussed enough. It doesn't seem like it has a solution. One solution that sort of like indirectly gets thrown out is the solution of like having cryptocurrencies basically be commodities, and stable coins continue to take the place of fiat, but that of course sort of implies that fiat continues to be in existence, which is what a lot of people don't like, and therefore they don't admit that this is what they're implying. But it's just a fascinating discussion that has no end in sight. So to sort of like not go down that rabbit hole, I would ask you, what are your favorite counter arguments for why Monero might fail? Or because like we have this, this is sort of like your specialty to talk breaking Monero. So what would break Monero in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, there's quite a few things that could break Monero. I mean, if there's not enough attention in the implementation of all the cryptography, boom, everything explodes, bad for everybody, everything's on fire, that would not be any good.
Well, people get thrown to jail. I'll need people that would deserve to be there, but yeah.
There would be a lot of people that would deserve to be in jail. Yeah. I mean, if people stopped using it, right, you need to have a community of people that are all together in order to have sensible privacy in the system. So if something better came along that people actually started using in large groups started using that instead for whatever reason, whether it's faster, cheaper, more efficient, and just better privacy, whatever it is. If people leave the pool of Monero privacy users and go somewhere else, that would be very bad for Monero's privacy. And therefore, why would you want to use it at that point, right? Mm-hmm. So that's certainly a risk. Chain analysis is always getting better. And there's more and more attention about Monero. And it is important that Monero continues to innovate. So if there is stagnation in the community where people aren't willing to improve the protocol over time, if people just let it sit by, I mean, it doesn't mean Monero is permanently doomed, perhaps, but it does mean that we're not doing what we need to do to stay ahead of everything on the privacy front. There are always things you can do better. And if you just let things stagnate, I mean, you're not doing your job to make sure that's a useful privacy tool anymore. It's kind of like an outdated tool that hopefully something better will come around to replace it. So it is important that Monero continues to innovate, continues to take the importance of privacy seriously, goes out of its way to make sure that on and off ramps that allow for liquidity trading use of Monero are there and people are using it. People care about privacy and advocate for the importance of privacy. But it is by and large a social problem, right? If you just don't have enough people in the Monero ecosystem that care about privacy and care to push these things forward, it's not going to matter, right? You need to have, and so I guess apathy is the most likely thing to break Monero, right? Is just people not caring about privacy, people not being able or willing to use it and to transact in it. That's what's going to kill it. So I do think that it's far less likely that that's going to happen now than it was in Monero's early history. But think about the history of the privacy environment, so to speak, back in 2014 when Monero launched. Right? Sure, you had a few extra people that were on the Bitcoin side that were starting to be more privacy conscious, but that was a very, very small part of the cryptocurrency community. And among the wider public, nobody really cared about privacy back then, right? Like, sure, you had Snowden that came out and that was a big thing at the time, but like, then people kind of forgot about it and didn't, like the vast majority of people just didn't really care. Now you have companies like Apple out there making multi-million-dollar ad campaigns about why privacy is important and why you should use iPhones because it has better privacy. And you have all sorts of WhatsApp discussions that are mainstream news about how, Facebook bad and Facebook bad privacy, therefore this, that, be careful, want privacy. People actually do somewhat care now. And so that's positive. I'm glad to see that people do care more about privacy. And so I think the likelihood that we're just going to go into some like crazy doomsday scenario, I mean, it's still there, but it's less likely than it was before. So, yeah, I mean, you have all sorts of technicals about why Monero would break, bad cryptography, bad privacy, no one cares. Someone tries to ban it and, is successful at scaring people away from using it. But like at the end of the day, you need to force people's hands. You need to make it so that Monero is a force of people that are using it for a bunch of legitimate reasons, and people are using it often, and that there's easy ways to get in and out. That's the best way to ensure its success.
What about this argument? I don't know. Someone was making it, someone famous in the crypto world. Someone was making it. I have no idea who that was. Completely forgot. But someone was making the claim earlier this week that eventually Bitcoin itself would be the best privacy tool because scalability, basically the argument that they would make is that scalability equals privacy. And once it gets big enough, it would be able to implement all the privacy features. And once it gets big enough, it'll be by itself like impossible to analyze it just because everything would be so broken down into so many pieces. What do you think about this argument? Is it complete nonsense or is there something to be rescued in there?
Oh, I think it was, you're referring to Edward Snowden probably. He said something along the lines of like, well, if Bitcoin's widely implemented and it's like the main thing everybody uses, then all Bitcoin would need to do is just drop in like a Monero-like privacy feature and boom, now the whole world has it. I just think that's frankly a dangerous line of thinking, I think, actually, because in order to like, Bitcoin isn't something where people just snap their fingers and are like, okay, now we have this thing implemented, right? Bitcoin hasn't ever had a protocol level major privacy improvement,
Right.
at least in the last many years, right? Like there hasn't been anything that's like, okay, this is going to focus on a privacy improvement. Taproot could have included some of those things, but those actually weren't included in any of the, and it weren't in the current rollout. And it, even so, it would have been like a very tiny fraction of what you actually would have needed, right? So the assumptions you're making there is obviously not you, but in order to have that opinion, you're basically, someone would have to assume that, this widely surveilled, very unprivate system is mass adopted by people.
Right.
How is that good for privacy? Right. Like,
Yeah.
and then once you got there, that people would be willing to go along with a major privacy improvement change. And at that point, you're going to have so much opposition and the like Bitcoin is very conservative, and you could argue this is rightful, perhaps, about implementing changes. And privacy is going to be a big part of it. You're not going to have the whole world be overwhelmingly pro-privacy, sadly. It's just not the way it's going to go. You have a lot of people that don't want this. And so how are you going to come to like universal consensus on something like that? You're just not. So I don't like the idea that, oh, well, let's widely adopt this super, super transparent system where the whole world, everybody in the world can see all the transactions you're making and quite trivially attribute them to you. And then let's make it private. Like no, I don't know. I really push back about that line of thinking. And I think that it's really, really dangerous because in the moment you're promoting a mass surveilled system and you're saying, get this in everybody's hands because eventually we'll add privacy to it. Like I just add it now, right? I don't like the idea that you need as an assumption that you need to make for the sake of eventually better privacy for everyone else, the idea that you need to accept mass surveillance right now. I just don't like it.
I would agree with everything you just said. I would agree with the fact that you cannot just wish for a tool to get all the privacy features and not compromise everything in the process. And I was recalling something you said in that Twitter Spaces the other day that really sparked my thinking, which was the fact that the programmability of money comes with a lot of needs for privacy. And that's something that doesn't get discussed in the DeFi space and in the Ethereum ecosystem in general, because you would be able to, if you just get in that mindset, you would be able to come up with a lot of catastrophic scenarios or a lot of dystopic scenarios in which DeFi or everything built upon these money Legos eventually becomes a social credit score system, right? So if you have insurance protocols that are in DeFi, for example, all of your information being on a public ledger can very easily, and this is the example that you yourself used, it's just what I'm using it, all your information on chain could be used to assign you a credit score and therefore reinforce at best or at worst and worsen inequality in all areas of life, basically. So how do you see privacy becoming an antidote for that or being implemented in these to avoid these kind of things?
It would heavily depend on the case, but I do think it is important to, like, for a variety of reasons, to have privacy. And to your point about things like social credit scores and like, not having privacy really easily enables discrimination against certain groups. Like it really does. And you've seen this time and time again in the history of the US and a bunch of other countries where they would issue loans to certain people and not issue the same loans to, people who have the same income and everything else. They just otherwise would not issue them a loan, whether it's based off what area they were living in or like all sorts of things. And on Twitter Spaces, I recently gave an example where on the TV show It's a Sin, for example, someone was applying for a mortgage, and they're asking a bunch of questions like, have you ever gotten an HIV test? Have you ever had sex with a man? Have you ever done like any of these things? Right. And those are like, if it was public record that you had paid for an HIV test, for example, like the fact that, oh, well, that, maybe that person wouldn't have gotten a mortgage, right? Would have disqualified them from getting a mortgage, right? So it is important to not be able to discriminate using all of these data points on people. And I think that it's easier said than done to simply, like, it's easy to say, oh, well, we just won't discriminate on these things. But like, when you actually go about making sure that you're not doing that, it becomes really, really complicated, because you have complicated systems that determine whether or not someone will, for example, get a credit card, right? And in practice, you're going to probably want to make, if you're the issuer of a credit card, you're going to want to lower your risk when you assign credit to people, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to look for ways to abstract that through, I don't know, machine learning or AI or whatever, like, where, on a simple level, you're going to use something like, you won't use Keras, but you'll probably use something like Keras, where you take in all these data points and you're going to be like, well, this black box says yes or no at the end, right? And it's not a human that does it. It just takes in all the data points, of which maybe people would have leaked a lot of information about their personal lives going up to that point. So it's concerning to me when you look at the level of transparency people might be providing over their finances. I think in practice, it's not super significant, or it's certainly not as big as it could be, because at the moment, most like cryptocurrencies play money for most people. Like, people aren't using cryptocurrency to actually pay for most of their healthcare needs. People aren't typically getting paid in cryptocurrencies. People aren't doing all these sorts of things that in a holistic system would be the type of, economic activity you would expect if you actually were using this in a widespread way. But it does concern me, the fact that you have so many different opportunities for discrimination along the way. It is honestly terrifying to me. And I think that people are likely to use it for ill, even if the intent isn't to use it for ill. Like, it will have horrible effects on certain groups.
It can have effects on which, like, people don't even realize that they're using it for real, right?
Yeah.
Because you would see a lot of well-intentioned but not so smart people make decisions on how others should live or shouldn't live their lives. That you can see how just cut out that translates down into discrimination of a lot of sorts. You mentioned the HIV test, which is a very good one, but just as with the HIV thing, you would, in your example, know that you didn't get a mortgage because of that. You could very well not even know, like, the platform wouldn't even accept you on, and it would effectively keep you outside of the system. Then if decentralized social media becomes a thing, oh, you retweeted him and her, so therefore you're associated perpetually with this circle of people that we don't like, and you're a communist, libertarian, Democrat, Republican, whatever, and that you're not allowed to enter our platforms. That's a very pressing issue that can be built right into the system. And like they say, like, this is money for enemies, right? Or these are tools that you should make for your enemies, not for your friends.
Yeah, think about all the possible data points that someone would want to have on you before they make like a risk-based decision. And it's important that we're not using those to discriminate against people. It's just, I don't know. Privacy is very important to help prevent ill, whether purposeful or not. But at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter that much if it's purposeful. All that matters is that these groups are getting discriminated against, and it's horrible. And there are lasting generational effects here in the US based off some of the bank policies that were made. Imagine if this is just not even a conscious decision by an entity you can hold liable. It's now someone writes code that does this, and it doesn't even tell you why you're like rejected.
We were talking about artificial intelligence the other day. We had Alan White here, who's a data scientist, and we were talking about this case in which, like, basically someone built an AI tool for human resource management, and turns out the AI became sexist because it would sort of optimize for the type of employee that the company would want, and the company would be predominantly, all the position would be predominantly fulfilled by males. So that's what the AI optimized for. And you would see that, oh, this government app that's built on the blockchain somehow ended up optimizing for people that have supported this government in the past, right? Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so you talk about like all these, I don't know. I know that you have some people that talk about things like accessibility of loans and how this helps accessibility and helps this and like perhaps, but you need to be really, really careful. And I want to make sure, like, I think that a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space are not typically discriminated against groups. And so I think this isn't very top of mind for a lot of people. And it's important for a variety of reasons that you think about these things and how people may discriminate against certain groups when you're designing a lot of these systems. And I don't know, it's when you take away ways for people to discriminate, there's less likelihood that you can. So privacy is one important tool to help reduce discrimination in those sorts of ways. So I can't speak for how different projects are going to implement privacy in their systems or whatever, but if something plugs into Monero for whatever you're building on the side, at least your interactions with Monero will be as well covered as anything can be reasonably covered today.
Man, I had a lot of fun talking to you today. Like, I think we covered a lot, especially on the Reddit front and on the Monero front. Is there anything else that you would like to elaborate on, or that you think that we missed when it comes to any of your areas of specialties as we close up?
I would say, the cryptocurrency space is open. Jump in and start working on stuff. And do think where you can, whatever you decide to do in the cryptocurrency space, about how you can incorporate privacy, and not just a way where you bolt on a feature where someone might eventually opt in to use this privacy thing. Think about ways where inherently in the design decisions that you're making that you are respecting the user's privacy, because it's a numbers game and you need to make sure that out of the box, you're providing users with the best chance that they can get with what they want to do. Don't just treat it as a side feature that only crazy people want. This is something that everybody wants. Nobody wants to purposely have something super, super public in most cases. So think very carefully about how you can improve privacy for people with whatever you decide to do. And the Monero community, the cryptocurrency subreddit, we're open. Pop in, say hi, be a part of it. These communities are only as good as the people that make them and work on stuff. So be the change you want to see in that regard.
I'll drop your Twitter. Yeah, your Twitter. How do you call it? Your Twitter handle. Sorry. I'll drop your Twitter handle in the description box for people to go and follow you. If there's anywhere else you want to direct them to.
No, Twitter's good. Just J Ehrenhofer, and you'll probably have to click on the link because good luck just remembering my last name.
Well, I really, yeah, that'll be on screen for people to see. So one thing I really like about this crypto community is that I can ask the most generic closing interview question and everyone always replies with something thoughtful and good. So thanks for making my job easy today, Justin. And you've been great to talk to. And well, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.